Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Live, a weekly live stream and podcast currently focused on Marvel's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is available to stream on Disney+. In today's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around Episode 2, The Star-Spangled Man, as well as other areas of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So be warned, there will be spoilers in this. If you don't already know this stuff, which I wouldn't imagine that you're watching this kind of show if you don't, but I thought I'd get that out of the way. If this is your first time here, then welcome. Please consider liking this video, consider subscribing to the channel and check out some of the other content that we've got here. And if you've got any comments, please put them down below. If you're watching us live, and we'd love to hear from you, so please get involved in the live chat. I will get to as many comments as I possibly can. But otherwise, if you found the show after the fact, then you can always put comments down below, and we'll try and respond to those as well. So I'm Keith Isles. I'm a filmmaker, an actor, and a lifelong film and television enthusiast. And for this show, I am joined by more film and TV enthusiasts from across the globe. And I've gone away and assembled a team of Avengers for tonight. So returning from last week, we have filmmaker and comic book aficionado for us, Clive Ashenden. Welcome back, Clive.
Hello, Keith. Good to see you.
Back for more.
That's right. Time to go to work, as they say in the episode.
Oh, I like it. Yes, time to go to work indeed. So, and in terms of doing some work and time to get to work, we're also pleased to welcome back screenwriter and self-professed geek himself, Graham Williams. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
What's the T-shirt tonight then?
Yes, I'm trying to dig out my Marvel T-shirt. So this is, excuse me for forbearing my belly, maybe, or stretching out. It is my Incredible Hulk that I got at a reasonable price. I think it was £5 for this T-shirt a few years ago, and it's lasted me well.
Wow, there you go.
There he is.
Marvel, supporting Marvel. I like it. Actually, Clive, are you wearing a fandom T-shirt there? I can only see.
I'm wearing Mr. Boris Karloff as Frankenstein.
Oh wow! Okay.
Knees.
There we go. All the genres covered. That's nice. Well, Ian David Diaz, the mega geek filmmaker, is actually away this week on a special mission. So he can't join us, but he will be back at some point along us covering this show. So, but I'm really pleased that I've got back on the stream the producer and partner within Let's See What's Out There, Pete Mealy.
Hey, how we doing?
All right, Pete. How you doing?
Let's get this out of the way. I am, of course, wearing a Star Trek shirt.
Of course you are.
But I am also wearing Wonder Woman short shorts and not showing those. Okay.
There we go. Well, it's good to have you back, Pete. It's been weird doing a few shows without you. It's kind of seemed a bit odd because obviously we started Let's See What's Out There over a year ago now when the world was a different place. And I remember similar things happened at the end of 2019 when filmmaker Simon Aiken and I stopped doing Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And the first few podcasts without him just seemed a bit weird. But there you go. Another shameless plug for another podcast that's out there, which I believe you've all guested on as well.
Yeah. And let me just say, you guys did a great job last week on this discussion. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there, but I listened to it all. I posted it as the podcast, and I think it was a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to carrying on with you guys, and I was so happy when Keith told me that you guys would both be here.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun to do.
There you go.
Thanks,
And
Pete.
we're only on week 2. So there you go. But before we get into it, I do want to sort of backstep slightly and ask Pete. I know you had thoughts on last week's episode 1. I just want, before we get into episode 2, to give you the opportunity to have your say, as it were. So, what are your feelings on that first episode?
Complicated, but I think in the bigger picture, listening to the conversation you guys had last week, I kind of fell into the same place as you, where there were good parts, there were bad parts, but overall it felt sort of formulaic. And when compared to WandaVision, which was such an explosion of new ideas, new thought, and new ways to tell stories, that this feels very reductive and sort of bland. And it was fine, but it didn't thrill me. Where I sort of differ from you guys is that I thought that the worst part of the show of episode 1 was the opening fight scene. I thought that the opening fight scene was just ridiculous and stupid, and we didn't need it. And all I'm going to say is that towards the end of the fight scene, the one guy stands up and goes, "Oh no, he's outnumbered now." And I was like, where have you been for the last 20 minutes? He has been completely outnumbered the entire time. This is so stupid. But then the parts where it got into the mortgages and sort of the back end stuff, that's where I was like, oh yeah, I want to see this. I'm interested in this. How do the Avengers get paid? Right? I was there 100% for that. So it was weird. But overall, it was adequate. They didn't wow me, but they didn't disappoint, I think.
Fair enough. Okay, well that's good, and that's what keeps these podcasts interesting, is having different viewpoints. As I said, I always like having Ian on these things, because he, as you know, is not shy about saying what he thinks about something, and it's often quite different to my thoughts. So it usually makes for an interesting discussion, if nothing else. But talking of changing formulas and doing things different per season, we're trying to do a similar thing with this, in so much as Let's See What's Out There has always had a sort of formula that a format that we follow for not only telling our thoughts and our nitpicks, etc. on it, but things like Easter eggs and behind the scenes production credits and all of that sort of thing. And last week we did a little bit of a sort of free flow to see how it went. Obviously, we want to hear from you, the people watching, and any comments you've got, I will sort of weave into this. But what we're going to do tonight is Clive has prepared a synopsis of the episode, and we're just going to go sort of in parts through that synopsis, and we're going to talk about Easter eggs, our thoughts, etc. on each part of it, rather than doing that all up front and then deconstructing it, if that makes sense. So we'll give it a try as an experiment. We're doing like Marvel Studios do. We're trying different formats. We're trying different cast members. We're really trying to mix it up. So on that note, Clive, let's start the synopsis.
Okay, then. Well, obviously, we ended episode 1 with the reveal of our brand new Captain America, John Walker. And our first scene is with John Walker, played by Wyatt Russell. And we see him backstage at his old high school, where he was the star quarterback. We also meet his wife, and we meet his best friend, Lamar Hopkins, aka Battlestar. And he's pretty nervous, and it's, but he seems like a nice guy. And then we go into scene 2 after our Marvel logo, where it's a sort of rah-rah pep rally for the new Captain America. He's going around, he's signing autographs. There's very much flavors of Captain America, the first Avenger, right, with this scene. And then he gets interviewed for Good Morning America. And this is where we get like a big exposition dump about his background. He's a war hero, 3 medals of honor, and we see some really cool footage of him training with the shield. And we also establish he's not a super soldier. He's just a really, really good athlete. He's like, you know, the best of the best, basically. And then that scene ends with as we cut to Bucky watching this in disgust. And yeah, that's where we end scene 2.
Cool. That's probably a good place to sort of look at that and sort of deconstruct what we've got there and look at Easter eggs and references, what we think about that portion of the story, and we'll save. Well, if any particular speculation or theorizing comes up, throw it in as well. But let's start with Graham. What were your thoughts on this part?
On this part, yeah. So I was coming in, positive. Just for the viewers to know, I was still on an adrenaline rush after my team of Wales had won the Six Nations Rugby Union Championships. So I was thinking to myself, actually, I've got to give Falcon and Winter Soldier some fairness here. I've just had Scotland beat France, no mean feat in the world of rugby union, and I thought, okay, I've got to just give it its dues because, yeah, I'm on a high and I'm beard up as well. This is the first Friday, but when I saw this, I was like, okay, you guys know I was a bit off and disappointed with the kind of cliffhanger from episode 1. So really pleased to see, actually, believe it or not, that they went a bit different, and we did have a Wyatt Russell shaped Captain America and not the Mark Gatiss that I did see. I didn't think the helmet did really any good with the ears. I thought it was a bit fun. Again, episode 1 finishing didn't do it for me. But then on rewatching today the full episode, my challenge for the entire episode was to actually be positive and actually find anything positive. So I know we're saying about just these scenes, but the entire episode, or second episode, did disappoint on Friday night. So actually coming into today and rewatching it, I was actually gunning for more of a positive angle on this, and it didn't actually disappoint today. In the clear, sober day, what they did with I thought introducing John Walker to us properly was again a surprise. As you if you watched last week, I don't know the comics around this Captain America very well, so I thought again it was Marvel being interesting and mature as well. So that was great. The run-in with the music as well, I thought was brilliant. And yes, it was a kind of a modern scene for where it was.
Sorry.
Public display of affection to a big level.
Stop there. That was lovely.
Yeah.
After having seen Barbara on LSWOT previously,
Yeah,
that was lovely.
there she is. Everyone says hi.
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 Hey, Barbara. How you doing? Good to see you. She's more than welcome to get involved in this if she wants to.
I tried to make her watch, but she was not interested.
When you say, you mean the episode, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Just framing this. Yeah.
Dear.
So anyway, yes. Where was I? Yes. So John Walker coming in. Yeah. Taking a modern look at Captain America, because yes, we did see Captain America have to don the rubbish, the not so great but PR friendly costume previously with Steve Rogers, and now seeing that, I saw it and I can I can appreciate this today with sober eyes. And then also, but did find it a bit odd that he had to have a sidekick. He went, a pal with him. So I thought, okay, that took me out a bit, but that was it on the first two scenes of this new episode.
Fair enough. Clive, as someone who's more familiar with the comic books than perhaps Graham or even myself, what are your thoughts on where we're at so far with that?
Well, I guess my thoughts were that they were clearly going in a very different direction to the comic books. I mean, as I referenced the run last week, but it's the sort of the Mark Grunwald, epic run on Captain America with 307 to 443, and in that, after Captain America basically gives up being Captain America, John Walker takes over, but he's initially introduced as almost a complete villain called the Super Patriot, this really extreme character, and then he takes over as the new Captain America, and then but he's always, he's basically a massive arsehole from the word go, and you kind of like really, really dislike him all the way through. Then like further on in his comic book run, he becomes US agent. He becomes a bit more of an anti-hero, but the idea, I guess, was to have this real contrast between, Steve Rogers, Captain America, who will pull a punch, who doesn't use a gun, who is, humble and noble. And you get this like loudmouth braggart guy whose attitude to violence is very much more on the Batman spectrum of things, if you see what I mean, where he will dish out like ultra violence. So, but then I guess they thought with this, we're going to go a different way because we're already primed to dislike this guy, right? Because he's not, he's not the people we're sympathizing with. He's not Bucky. He's not Falcon, who was given the shield. So and then when we first see him, he's winking, he's looking cheesy. We're like, oh, this guy's going to be a bit of an arsehole. So then they introduce him as being, actually like a human, like as someone like, oh, he's worried he won't be able to sort of do this, and you're like, okay, he seems okay. And then even shows he's even a bit humble during his Good Morning America interview, and you're like, okay, this is we're getting a few more shades here. I did notice that though that they are sort of seeding some things in. It's like there's this comment from Battlestar, and I wrote it down, and he says, this shit comes with expectations, brother. You can't just punch your way out of problems anymore. So that sort of seems to indicate that was very much his way of doing things, and I wonder whether we're going to see a bit more of that as things go along. So
yeah, nice bit of speculation there, and very well observed. Pete, what about you? What about your thoughts on where we're at so far through this synopsis?
Yeah, so I think that I was really interested to see who this new Captain America was. I have not kept up with the John Walker comics, but I do know from my limited comic book reading that Captain America would quit for a while, other people would take up the mantle, and so was ready for it. I think that they're building an interesting dynamic. I thought, who said it was strange that he needed to have a sidekick, but I thought that was sort of right on. Like that made a lot of sense to me. That if you're going to take on the mantle of Captain America, you're going to want your own Howling Commandos with you, right? And so that made a lot of sense to me. That he's got his sort of backup buddy there. I think that they did a good job of introducing the character and giving him a lot of sort of background. And my worry after the sort of cliffhanger ending of episode 1 was that the new Captain America was going to be the same superhuman person who was robbing the bank, right? That it was going to be an obvious villain plant. And so this episode right away was like, no. this is a guy whose heart is coming from the good place. And while I think later on in the episode they sort of really start to sow seeds of doubt there, this entry point was great.
Cool. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm kind of in agreement and on board with what you guys are saying. What struck me about it was the way that last week's episode ended. And, obviously, as a matter of storytelling, this is about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I thought, well, I guess we're not supposed to like this guy. I guess we're not supposed to like this version of Captain America. And what I found really surprising about the opening and the first couple of scenes was, credit to Wyatt Russell, and the way it had been written was that they really humanized him, and he was actually quite a likable guy in those early few scenes. As I said, very humble in his Good Morning America, which, by the way, is another Disney affiliate. So I suppose it's a bit meta there that they're getting that in. But likewise, the signing of the action figures and all this sort of stuff. But I thought that was really well done. I only watched it today, actually, because this past week I've been pretty much heavily involved in another superhero franchise for another studio, and sort of have been engulfed in that for the past week, and even did a live stream on Friday for it. So viewers, check that out, please. But so yes, I came to this sort of late. Normally I watch these things on a Friday, but I didn't actually watch it until this morning. And yeah, I was really drawn in by it. And I kind of liked the way they brought the audience up to speed by having him interviewed on the Good Morning America show, so that we got his backstory, which, as I said, I wasn't familiar with. I'm not familiar with that particular comic run. And I thought they did quite a good job of that. I like the way he also points out that, we get name drops for Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. And he points out that he doesn't have, any special equipment or any superpowers in any way.
Well, he's got the shield. That's special, right?
Exactly. Well, when I saw him throw and catch that shield, bearing in mind he can't have had that shield that long, right? I did sort of think to myself, has he really not got any special powers? Because that seemed pretty impressive, even for a top athlete,
The PR angle here, yes. So Steve Rogers was, the good old American, and he is a super soldier, whereas John Walker isn't. So it's all TV and all the rest of it. And again, it's that modern take on what should be, a super guy, maybe not as a superhero. So I was okay with that, because they could have CGI'd it or whatever you say.
Yeah, well, talking of a modern take on as well, one of the sort of references, Easter eggs or whatever that I liked that they did was the performance that they put on to announce him at his old high school was very reminiscent of the bit, as I think Clive had already mentioned, in Captain America: The First Avenger, where Steve Rogers starts doing those sort of propaganda type shows and whatever for the military, and they had the sort of dancing number with the dancing girls and whatever for that. In fact, my good friend James Payton, I'm very envious, was in that scene. He played Hitler, who got sacked by Steve Rogers. So there you go. I know someone connected with Marvel. Hey, but yeah. So I thought it was a really good way of introducing this character. And I thought that they made him relatable and likable in those first couple of scenes.
And they reused the Captain America theme from those movies in there, right? It's the same music, just rearranged. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, if there's no more thoughts or anything on where we've got to there, push on, Clive, with the next
I will just one more comic book note is that Battlestar, that character Graham, he is actually in the comics. So, just FYI.
Thank you.
Anyone who knows me well knows that to me, Battlestar is a completely different thing.
That's right. Yeah. Well, if he gets into space, maybe he'll change his name, right?
Maybe, yeah. It did seem more like Captain Exposition. I get he was nice, but yeah, okay. My opinion, as Ian David would say.
Okay, so carrying on with our story, we then meet up with Sam, who's in an airfield where he sees Torres, and then Bucky barges in, who apparently has clearance to just wander around US Army bases, which is interesting. And he immediately gets straight to the point with, "You shouldn't have given up the shield," with like his first words. So then we have a bit of a sparky back and forth, and Sam tries to get rid of Bucky, but he insists on tagging along on Sam's mission to take on the Flag Smashers in Germany. And then we get some nice odd couple banter about the big three, which apparently are androids, aliens, and wizards. Which, despite Bucky saying that's not a thing, apparently is a thing. So.
Oh, that's a thing.
Proven later on. Yeah, it is a thing. Big three.
Clive, do you want to start on this section with your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is kind of the show. This is sort of this is what you want, right? You want Falcon and the Winter Soldier together. We had a whole episode where we didn't get that. I mean, I was pretty playing with my thoughts last week in that I was a bit disappointed about that. I felt, I mean, and that's what they advertised it as being the odd couple, and I really enjoyed their interactions in things like Civil War and so on, where that whole they clearly were putting up with each other. This whole thing where they're almost like step brothers, right? Where they've been pushed together into this family, but they're supposed to get on with each other, but they immediately start butting heads. So, but yeah, so that was really nice to see.
Cool. Any other? Was there any, particular Easter eggs or anything that sort of jumped out in that part? For any of you?
Well, I was thinking more the Gandalf. Bucky had actually read it in when it was originally published, and I liked that. On the scene itself, I didn't so much on Fridays. Watch it again today. I thought it was a bit forced, but that wizard Gandalf bringing Doctor Strange, apologies, to the Doctor who worked really hard at becoming the Wizard Supreme. It was that was nice. It made me chuckle personally. That the rest of the scene, seemed a bit forced there, gents. But that was the only reference Easter egg really. I'm bringing Doctor Strange in, but I'm not a comic book aficionado for the Falcon nor the Winter Soldier characters.
Yeah.
Anything that popped up?
No, I not particularly. It's certainly not comic book wise. I mean, I think this is very much MCU city here, isn't it? It's like, here we are again. These guys are back together again, and they immediately go back into their old routine, albeit with a bit more kind of like spice, because Bucky feels that he's let Cap down, right? So yeah.
Well, I challenge the spice there. I think it was more cheese.
Okay.
Personally, again, I was genuinely trying to challenge myself today to be positive, and this scene let it down. And I totally, I'm with you there, Clive, on the quip where Bucky can just walk into any American military airfield or establishment otherwise, and just show his arm. Maybe his arm is just his pass key to everything, everywhere in the world. So I didn't really enjoy this so much.
In my head canon, Graham, there's a path of comatose bodies, like leaving from the gate all the way to the bit where he just suddenly rocks up. Like these people have gone, have you got a pass? And he just knocked them out. But there we go.
Why did we see that scene? I'd have been there. I'm sure I would have been there. Not that I'm always after ultra violence, I'll have you know. But I did find it strange that they're in there. So again, I'm trying not to be too negative, really, but I'm obviously failing miserably.
Pete, any thoughts from you on that bit?
I'm gonna sort of offer a more middle of the road approach, which is that I thought it was fine. It was perfectly suitable. My one thought was, like, don't these guys need passports to go anywhere, right? Like, it's bananas to me that they just, like he just walks into the base and then all of a sudden they're on a plane to the UK, or sorry, that's wrong. They're on a plane to Europe. Apologies. I know that's a point of contention. Stupid American. But it was the sort of the back and forth dialogue between them, I thought was it was fine. It was adequate. It wasn't a complete travesty, but it wasn't amazing. And so I think we're spoiled in that we've gotten a lot of great MCU. And this is mediocre MCU. And so, okay. I'll take it. I'll take it over, just like how I take bad Star Trek over good anything else, I'll take mediocre MCU.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, I did actually like the banter of the scene, regardless of if it's a bit cheesy or not. But and on your sort of Star Trek note there, that's quite a good thing. I was thinking about this. I obviously think about this stuff way too much, but I'm thinking about these series and the fact that obviously WandaVision was slightly different in the fact that those were sort of 30-minute episodes, but we had like 9 of them, and in this case we got sort of 6 sort of 45-50-minute episodes, obviously with a lot of end credits. But I sort of think of it as with the MCU, we see around two hours or so twice a year, okay, with the movies, and those are kind of almost like the sort of big world-changing events, or the introduction and origins of certain characters and all that in the movies. And what we've got with the series now is we can see some of the stuff that takes place in between. And I always used to think that, in the 90s with Star Trek, I used to think, the Next Generation showed the sort of character stories and things that would happen sort of during their ongoing mission. And then we get the movies, which would show, the Borg attacking Earth and all of this sort of big stuff. And I kind of feel like that, like, okay, fair enough, we didn't get the Captain America, we didn't get Falcon and the Winter Soldier together in the first episode, but we have more time to tell this story. And I kind of like that they, before we get what we've had in the films with them together and having the banter, we had a little bit of where they're at post blip and what's going on. So I kind of didn't mind that we spent an episode sort of without that, but we're full on into it now. So it's just a different way of storytelling, I guess. But anyway, talking of storytelling, Clive, continue to tell us the story, please.
Okay, well, we get captured in Munich, Germany, and Sam and Bucky are in the plane, and there's a bit of banter / bickering about the lack of a plan. Sam flies off, then Bucky, because it's too low for a parachute, drops 100 feet straight out of the plane, hits all the trees on the way down, and is just sort of left there flat on his back while Red Wing tapes the whole thing, and Sam mocks him. And then we get Sam, Bucky, and Red Wing scouting out an abandoned factory where the Flag Smashers are loading trucks. And we get a bit of banter about, he calls him White Panther at one point because he's so stealthy, I believe. And then he says actually White Wolf, bit of referencing back. And then they use Red Wing's thermal imaging to spot sort of the numbers of the Flag Smashers, and to see that there's a potential hostage in one of the back of the two trucks. And then we're into the big action set piece where they go after the two trucks as they're on the road, and we see Bucky immediately catching up to one of the trucks using his sort of superhuman speed to basically open one of the back and go into the one with a hostage. Discovers that they're actually stealing vaccines, and they find a young woman with red hair who it turns out is not a hostage because she attacks him and masks up. The hostage is actually the leader of the Flag Smashers, Carly Morgenthau, played by Erin Kellyman, who Star Wars fans will recognize. And then battle transfers to the top of the trucks, and at which point Carly grabs hold of Red Wing and breaks it into on her knee. Sam joins in the fight, and just when things are sort of not going so well because they're outnumbered and all of these people are super soldiers, then a helicopter appears and it's Captain America. Walker drops down with Battlestar, and we get a 6 versus 4 battle, and and then that sort of ends up with Bucky stuck hanging off the bottom of one of the trucks, and Sam rescues him, but that takes them both out of the battle, and then we're left with Walker and Battlestar. They're overwhelmed. Battlestar gets thrown off the truck. Walker saves him with quite a cool way by throwing his shield off to kind of cushion the fall, but then gets punched off himself into the windscreen of an approaching car, and the Flag Smashers escape.
Cool. A good place to sort of chime in then with more thoughts on that. Pete, do you want to kick off this bit?
Sorry, I was like, who was in Star Wars? And so I was just Googling that.
Yeah, that is doing quite well from Disney properties at the moment, isn't she?
Yeah, yes. She was the lady in Solo.
Weirdly similar character as well, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, oddly similar character. I think you missed out the best line of the show, which was, I always wanted to do that, when she destroys the Red Wing. Whatever it's called. Sorry.
Yeah.
Which I found really amusing. This whole battle sequence, it did make me wonder about super soldiers. Again, we'll get into this more later in the episode, but it just seems like there's so many super soldiers, and where the hell were all these super soldiers 10 years ago? Right? Like, these super soldiers just keep showing up. And so then how is it that, the new Captain America, John Walker, is not a super soldier? But I do think they tried to show that pretty well, that like he, yeah, Dr. Evil. Exactly. You've got the chair for it too. Wow.
Bone here, people.
But I think they did the fight scene was, again, it was adequate, right? It was a little bit strange that for part of it, just 2 super soldiers are holding Bucky so that the redheaded lady can beat up Falcon. But yeah, so again, it was like parts of it just didn't seem to make sense to me. logically, which I think that's me quoting Ian David Diaz if he wasn't here, right? Filling in his thoughts. I'm sure that the logic on this scene does not flow well, but yeah, there we go.
Cool. Graham?
I'll chip in with I think my only written gag for this one, as I did from episode 1 as well. Why aren't these guys called bag snatchers? They're stealing stuff, right? Flag smashers is still when Sam says the word, the name again. I don't know why he didn't just crack up. Flag smashers. It's not working for me, guys. It isn't. So bag snatchers, they are known as. And if I refer to them as bag snatchers, it's an apology to the writers of the MCU. But I can't get away from it. So anyway, yeah. So I'm more with Pete in this one. For me, it kind of worked and it didn't either. The action got going and it was exciting. Great, we've got a bit of that. And Cap coming in with Lamar as he introduces himself, not as bad as that first. Coming into rescue, I thought that was a nice touch because Bucky and Falcon really aren't doing that well, and so we also find out later on how come Captain America. So it's not a plot hole that Captain America and Battlestar do turn up, and it is a nice twist as well, where you do get I can't remember her name now, but Erin anyway, the actress.
Harley.
There we go. Thank you. On names as well. I know in Solo, a Star Wars story where she was, her name, I did see today on IMDb, her name was Envis, which is actually Welsh for rainbow. A factoid for all of you out there.
In a galaxy far, far away. There you go.
But yeah, so again, flowing through the banter between the two, between Bucky and Falcon, I thought was a bit strained. But then we get into the action, which made me forget about it, and it was mediocre. Pete, I agree there. It was. Again, on first viewing, I was going, this is a bit gratuitous. Today, it did make a bit more sense. And then the introduction of the super soldiers. But don't forget, guys, that you say, where were they 10 years ago? Don't forget, these guys are actually forming out of the blip for 5 years. We don't actually know yet what happened during those 5 years for these. We're hearing some exposition that, they came to possibly power. And there weren't half the humans on the planet as well, so different political factions and administrations did grow. So potentially, we will find out in the future that these guys became super soldiers during those 5 years. Yeah, I unless you can correct me if I'm wrong. We haven't heard that yet. So 10 years ago. Actually, I'm thinking 5 years ago this could have happened. So maybe that is part of the premise of this the show, that you get more on what happened during the blip, and maybe.
I think they're sort of drip feeding us this sort of stuff. But Clive, Erin Kellyman's character, I believe, is a gender swapped character from the comic books. Is that correct?
I must admit, I don't know on that one.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah, I think it's Carl Morgenthau or whatever in the comic books, and cool. They've changed it over for this. Which is
in this just to see if it does say it doesn't have John Walker in there, even though it does say. But I'm just going to quick look while you speak.
Anyway, Clive, what was your thoughts on that section then? While Graham's looking that up.
My gosh, the book matches his shirt.
Exactly.
If you held it a specific way, it would be like you weren't even looking.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
I had this last week, and I did see that Red Wing was actually a Falcon as well, which made me smile. But obviously, Clive props there for bringing that up. So I'm just going to, you kind
of. What my thoughts on this section? I'm kind of in agreement that I wasn't that wowed with the action here. I mean, I'm on record as having really enjoyed the opening action scene. Unlike Pete on last week, I thought that was really well done. It felt like something out of the movies. This one didn't. This one felt more, it did in terms of, oh look, here's the characters we recognise, but it felt. What kept me going is that it felt like it was, in terms of a script, it was beated out quite well. So there were turns rather than the actual action itself being thrilling. It felt very familiar, and maybe that's what you get after so many years of MCU, is things start to sort of have their own sort of pattern. So it's difficult to kind of surprise people. But because you've got this character, because the Carly character seemed to be like almost a retread of the character in Solo, where it's like, oh, we got this masked character who's the leader of a bunch of rebels / terrorists, and oh look, but actually, it's a lady.
Can I just say, after last week, Clive, you were absolutely right again. It wasn't that rule. It was a lady.
Well, there you go. Thanks. So it's you get that reveal. The fight on top of the trucks, I felt like I'd seen that before. It sort of, again, it reminded me sort of. I'm trying to remember the episode in The Mandalorian where they're sort of where they're in the truck and they're trying to get it. They're actually sort of posing as Imperial stormtroopers. You remember that one?
Yeah,
yes.
The Matrix, or 2 or 3 as well. Where
it's like, but only that was really, really good, and this just felt kind of, sort of just there. But so it for me, it was almost like all about the beats, like I just laid out. Like, oh, it's like Bucky's there, and oh look, he's just been taken out, and she's not a hostage, and then oh look, it's like Sam's come in. But they're holding Bucky, and now it's just him against the leader, and he's a bit outmatched. And then, then it's Captain America. It's John Walker. Then it's it's Battlestar, and then they're fighting. Then it gets a bit messy. Then then things aren't going well, and Bucky's sort of getting smashed down. He's got his arm out, and he's about to fall. And then so it was just like one thing after another, as opposed to kind of. It wasn't incoherent. It was directed in a way where I could understand the geography of it. I wasn't, I could follow it. It just wasn't exciting.
Oh, okay. I have to admit that I'm the one here that kind of differs to you guys then, because for me, I found that whole truck chase action sequence massively exciting. I was sat upright with a big smile on my face, absolutely loving every minute of it. It's that thing, when I think back when I was a kid, the whole thing that got me interested in movies in the first place was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the truck chase in that kind of obviously was always set the bar for me. And of course, that was done in a time when it was done with stunts and use of camera and editing and music and all that to make it dramatic. So it was done for real. And that itself obviously based on some of the the John Ford westerns and some of the Zorro films and stuff from the 40s. But it's funny with this, when I watch something now, I kind of always assume that it's visual effects. It's just that visual effects have got that good now that it looks, photorealistic. And I just, I love that whole scene. I like I enjoyed the banter. We've used banter a lot in this podcast so far, but I enjoyed the banter between the characters, and I loved it when Cap and Hoskins, because I refuse to call him Battlestar. I'm sorry, but when those guys came in and joined, and I just thought it was really kick-ass. Again, it did make me question whether they've got abilities or not, though, because you know, they're clearly very good athletes, but again, some of the stunts that they were performing on that seemed kind of superhuman to an extent. Obviously, we know that the guys they were fighting were enhanced, and of course Bucky is, but no, I really loved that scene, and I thought it was so well shot and executed. So I'm coming at a slightly different viewpoint to you guys on that one, I'm afraid. But hey, you know, that's what keeps it interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think some of the points which I was a little bit disappointed about was it was taking place on an actual road, and you had the two trucks, but it felt like there was opportunities for more danger where the trucks could push together. You know, like I didn't feel like Bucky was ever in any danger of being crushed between the two vehicles. They had vehicles following them, but you know, it was like they were in their own little bubble on the road where it just happened. And it's like there could have been more jeopardy. It's like the other cars on the road only sort of appeared to sort of appear whenever it was convenient in order to cushion people's fall.
Can I just say, I have driven in Germany, and although I haven't driven in Bavaria and on the Autobahn out of Munich, we did a stag do there once, and we just got fed. We just got flown in. We drank for 3 days, ate a lot of meat, and then flown out. So it could.
I'm seeing a pattern here, Graham.
Yeah.
Sorry, but carry on.
Yeah, no, having been to Berlin as well, they do drive carefully, far more carefully than in Paris. Parisian driving is just wild, worse than London completely. But yeah, maybe Clive. They're very careful drivers down there in Bavaria. Who knows?
Are they? Okay, cool.
I think what you're saying is fair comment, and also I totally agree with you that it was very reminiscent of that scene in the Mandalorian. The episode, I think it was the penultimate episode, which had Bill Burr in it. That's the episode you were thinking of, right? Where they have a fight on the top of a troop transporter, and it did kind of feel similar. All right, well let's continue to push on with the story.
Okay, so we then see Carly and her flag smashers arrive at their destination, which is a safe house. Carly gives the signal, and their host Rudy lets them in and gives them the tour, food, coffee, and he starts spouting about how he's a believer in their cause, tells them they're freedom fighters and calls them the new Robin Hood. Shows them Bear's computer, and at which point Carly gets a text from an unknown number which says, "You took what was mine. I'm going to find you and kill you." And she's visibly frightened by this threat. Their computer guy notes that they're already being looked for and starts clearing up their online trail in that movie way that they do, where apparently you can hit a few buttons and things just start deleting, just in little bars. Carly gives the troops a speech about not letting things go back to the way they were before, and then drops this thing about how after tomorrow there's going to be no going back. So this sort of like, something's going to happen. But he asks the seven for their commitment to the cause, and they start chanting "One world, one people." Then we cut to Bucky and Sam on the. Oh, hang on, I've missed a bit, haven't I? I skipped over. Okay. Rewind. Before that scene, we had Sam and Bucky walking back down a country road, discussing their new discoveries about how after 80 years, how are there 8 super soldiers running loose? Basically, is the gist of that. Mm-hmm. And then an army truck appears alongside them, and it's Walker and Battlestar or Hoskins, if you prefer. Yeah. And Walker wants them to work together to stop the flag smashers. Sam and Bucky say no. He offers them a ride back to the airport. They grudgingly accept the lift. They then compare notes on them, and and there's a bit of sort of butting heads about you're not the real Captain America, and then we get this info dump about sort of some post-blip stuff about the GRC, the Global Repatriation Council, UN organization managing resources for the sort of all the refugees have been created by just reappearing afterworld. And then eventually, Bucky gets him to stop the truck, and he leaves because he's sort of disgusted, but with the Battlestar name and everything it represents. Then Walker tries to reason with Sam, but then he ends up alienating him by giving a comment about needing Cap's wingman. Sam gets out and follows Bucky. So and then we go to Carly and the Flag Smashers. So yeah.
Cool, excellent. So any thoughts on that bit?
Sorry, Pete. I was just saying. This is what I really was looking for, and I thought the dialogue between and this and in fairness to Clive, the scenes afterwards with the bag smashers. Great. We've got our exposition. We've got the story we really were after, and that's all I have to say. But loved it. Really positive about this, Pete.
I was going to say kind of the opposite, which is that I do not understand what the bag smashers are doing. And like all I can think is that, a world without borders, again, apologies to people in England with Brexit, but a world without borders doesn't sound that bad to me. And so I'm like, why are these guys the bad guys? Like, I haven't figured out why they're the bad guys. They're stealing medicine to give to people who need it. And they want a unified world. And as a Star Trek fan, that sounds all like the correct things to me. So I don't understand why they're the bad guys yet. Maybe it'll show up. But like, unlike Captain America, John Walker, who like we're starting to see, hey, these are some of the not great things about him. I have yet to see any of the not great things about the bag smashers. They seem dedicated. They seem like that it's not, like a dictatorship. There's not one person setting the rules. They're all in it together. They're all trying to make a better world. I'm just confused at this point as to why they're the bad guys.
I would suggest, Pete, that we're going to find that out. I think just because they're stealing vaccines doesn't mean they're going to give them to all the people in the camps. That's a suggestion that's made at one point in the episode, but we don't know that's what they're stealing them for. And I think they what they're doing is kind of making that point that fanatics are people in groups like who really believe in their cause. They think they're the good guys, right? And so. And they make a good job of actually saying, oh look, they do have a point about some things, about maybe we weren't there, right, because we never saw what things were like in between. We just flashed forward. So maybe things were better for a lot of people when was Thanos right? Half the world disappeared, and then suddenly the whole world, the old world order, comes back crashing in, and So, I agree, Pete, that they're clearly idealistic, and they don't paint Carly as being like a total villain. So, but the question is, what have they got planned? I don't think it's anything good.
I think for the show, this is where the grey, the texture, all of it comes in, and the fact that Pete's like, well, why are they villains, and Clive saying, well, actually, we do have to wait, and that's why I'm now excited for the future of this show. What the story that we're having here, which I really wasn't there beforehand, and these two scenes together with the guys in the Jeep in Bavaria, and then where we're at another part of Bavaria too. Brilliant. This is it. This is the show. And as at this point, guys, that I started thinking on Friday and then today about exactly what Clive and Ian said last week, and which disappointed me. No, not what Clive and Ian had said. In the fact that they were right, and I didn't want them to be right. I wanted the show to be different to what they were saying, and unfortunately, now it invalidates a lot of what episode 1 had given us. So Sam's story, for instance, with his sister, gone, pushed to one side completely. We're now into the nub of where we're going to go with this, and unfortunately, why couldn't they have started that in episode 1? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Where we are in texture and this grey, as I just mentioned, where was that previously? It seems a bit of a waste. We got there eventually. Yippee! Great, we're here, and that's where I now feel where that disappointment was. But again, let's take it on to the positive. We're there now, and we're getting the story that we hoped for or advertised anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's entirely the point as well. The fact that you're now engaged and excited to see more, and obviously let's see where the storytelling takes us, because we're only on episode 2 of 6, so we got a lot to unfold here, and we're going to find out more. I have thoughts on this from a thematic point of view, but I think I'll save those to a bit further on. So let's carry on pushing through this story.
Okay, cool. So after our scene with the Flag Smashers, we then see Sam and Bucky on the plane back home. Bucky suggesting they take the shield away from Walker. Sam points out that this would make them fugitives and reminds him of the events of Civil War. We get a name check for Sharon Carter, who, despite appearing in the end credits, we have not yet seen. Sam says they lost and that they have no leads, but then Bucky reveals that he knows someone Sam should meet. And then we go to Baltimore, Maryland, suburban neighborhood, and we see Sam and Bucky in this neighborhood, and then we get a nice, cute interaction between Sam and this local kid who calls him Black Falcon. And then they visit a house where they meet Elijah and his grandfather, Isaiah Bradley. And Isaiah tells the story of how he and Bucky met and fought when Bucky was the Winter Soldier during the Korean War in 1951, and how he kicked his ass and took most of his metal arm away. And then we get some reveals here. We get and Bucky tells him, "I'm not a killer anymore." And Isaiah says, "You think you can just wake up one day and decide who you want to be? It doesn't work like that. Or maybe it does for folks like you." And during this whole bit, I think we are hitting some thematic beats that the show's already sort of got into. So I'm sure we'll come back to that. Isaiah gets enraged and demonstrates superhuman strength by throwing this tin so it embeds itself into the wall. And when we get the revelation that that Isaiah was a super soldier, created like Cap, but only he wasn't treated the same, and in fact he was put in jail for 30 years and experimented on, where they took, and so they've maybe creating a seed for where all these new super soldiers have come from. And then Sam and Bucky get thrown out, and then we get this sort of scene on the street where Sam and Bucky have this verbal altercation outside with Sam, because Sam's really upset. He didn't know about Isaiah, and Bucky reveals he didn't tell Steve either. Then the police car suddenly pulls out, and 2 white officers get out, and they immediately go after Sam and ask for his ID and ask Bucky if Sam is bothering him. Then when it becomes clear though that Sam is Falcon from the Avengers, the lead cop suddenly changes his tune completely and apologizes to Sam. Another police car pulls up. There's a bit of conflict between the police officers, and then Bucky is arrested. It turns out he's missed one of his mandated therapy sessions to go on this mission. So he's arrested and driven away.
Fair enough. Yeah. And also that was something I mentioned last week when I was saying about the sort of redacted style titles that they had. And I noticed Carl Lumley being in that. So I was really pleased this week to see his character come into it for sure. But I also did like the fact that I thought it was quite a nice little exchange where the kid calls him Black Falcon. And obviously, historically, in the sort of comics, we've obviously had Black Panther, and DC had like Black Lightning, and it's kind of good to have a superhero that isn't identified by their ethnicity in their superhero name. So I thought that was quite a nice little the way you said, "So are you Black Kid?" I thought that was quite funny.
It was quite funny.
But yeah, that deals with a lot of themes going on in the US. Well, not only now, but has been going on in the US for decades. But quite nicely handled, I feel. But let's talk about that, and especially this character of Isaiah Bradley and what his sort of heritage, and not only how they're setting up in the MCU, but also in the comic source material. So who wants to go first? I don't mind. I keep picking on people, but chime in.
Well, I could briefly talk about the comic stuff. I mean, Isaiah Bradley, his character was introduced in this sort of limited series called The Truth, Red, White, and Black, where it was revealed that basically, in order to create the Captain America and the super serum, they experimented on a whole bunch of black GIs, and this story was sort of based on a true story. Obviously, they didn't create super soldiers, but about how black GIs were experimented on. And it's
horrible, isn't it? What a horrible story! But
it is a horrible story. And then we see what happens to Isaiah Bradley, and at one point, because they don't get to, because the idea is they will never be captain, and they in that time that they weren't supposed to be Captain America. A lot of them die in the program, but then the Isaiah Bradley character at one point steals Captain America's uniform and actually goes out and sort of does some missions as, like, quote, the Black Captain America. So I haven't actually read that series, but it does sound fascinating. Yeah, and it's something that obviously that they're taking from that series to incorporate into this, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, they just shifted it to the Korean War for this, right? So it obviously makes more sense with the age and the timeline and stuff. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
What I'm hoping, though, with this series is that this particular scene was powerful, and we did have a bit of fun with it. And obviously, it's the MCU dealing with race issues. I'm hoping they're not just going to have just these two scenes and then say, "Yeah, we've dealt with race now. Let's move on." It's like, if you're going to deal with it seriously, it has to be consistent as well. There was an element of that in the first episode. Maybe that's why they wrote it, to have the sister in and the bank and all the rest of it. And there was with the dialogue, there was something brewing there. So I hope they can be sure and do this correctly. And as we, many of us anyway, live our lives, which is to daily act and behave in ways that are fair and equal to all. And I'm hoping that these just knocked in there, just for the sake of dealing with it, and then just moving on. But no, it was a good bit of storytelling there. Again, builds on to where we get to the end of the episode, and some history there with Bucky, and of course this other super soldier. Some great performances in this scene too. And where are we going after that? Obviously, Clive will tell us in a few minutes with the next scene too. But yeah, it really did have, here's what's really happening in the world. I for one appreciated that, and again, to repeat myself, I hope that does continue through this as I've introduced it, and it's not just bin it now because they believe they've dealt with it and that's it.
Sure. Any thoughts on this, Pete, that you want to chime in with?
Yeah, I agree with the sort of sentiment here that they're touching on some really important subjects and looping it in. I think that from a story point though, I don't quite get what we got out of going to Isaiah. It didn't seem like I don't know. I felt like it was slower there than I thought it needed to be. I'm not sure. It felt like sort of
on eventually. I thought, Pete. Yeah, I felt watching it first, but actually, it does give a bit more texture to Bucky, but also these super soldiers as well, and it does bring in the concept, because don't forget, Falcon didn't know that he knew, and Captain America didn't know about this program for super soldiers. So I thought that without that, you would, where this story seems to be going with these super soldiers, you may find a bit of a gap or too much of a plot hole. So that's how I felt anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Sense. Yeah, it felt sort of crowbarred in, right? And like I kept waiting for more to happen with it. Maybe that's going to come in future episodes. But yeah.
No, I mean, it's definitely sprinkling things in. Again, we're looking at a streaming series as opposed to a movie here, so obviously the pacing of these things are slightly different because we've got more real estate to tell the story. But I definitely have thoughts on this, again, from a thematic level, but I don't want to sort of ruin the flow of the story. So push on, Clive, and we'll get to these things at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we left it with Bucky being arrested, and then we moved to the police station where he's being held, and we have Sam meets Dr. Rayner, Bucky's therapist, who we saw in episode 1. He thanks her for getting Bucky out of jail, and then she reveals it wasn't her. Then we see Walker in full Captain America uniform, and it turns out he's pulled the strings to get Bucky released, and also ensured that Bucky no longer has to follow a strict schedule of mandated therapy sessions. So, and he says he's too valuable of an asset to have tied up. And then he says he'll be outside after Dr. Rayner is finished with them. And as Bucky is led out, Dr. Rayner says the condition of Bucky's release is a joint therapy session with Sam and him immediately. So then we get this this 5-minute couples therapy session where we get this whole odd couple bit is really turned up to 11, and I guess this depends on your mileage may vary here, right? We get this this soul gazing exercise where they have to look into each other's eyes, turns into a staring contest. But then after a lot of kind of snipey stuff, Bucky opens up about why he's so mad about Sam giving up the shield. Basically he says Steve believed in you. But maybe he was wrong about you, and if he's wrong about you, then he was also wrong about me. And then it ends after they're basically the therapist throws up her hands and kind of gives up, with them agreeing to put aside the differences for this one mission, and then agreeing that they'll never see each other again afterwards. So, and then outside, Walker and Battlestar are waiting for them, and Walker tries to recruit them again. He shares some more intelligence, tells them the Flag Smashers leader is called, and this is where we find out her full name, Carly Morgenthau, and they think that she's taking the stolen medicine to one of these hundreds of post-blip refugee camps. And then Sam pointedly but firmly sort of declines to join up with Walker, and then he explains his reasons. He says that he and Bucky are free agents and aren't constrained by rules of engagement in the same way that he would be. So it doesn't make sense for them to join up. But then it ends with Walker giving them this ominous warning to stay the hell out of his way. So there we go.
Cool.
Excellent. That's the end of the episode, right?
No. There's one more bit.
Oh, do that one more bit.
Yeah, let's do the one more bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we get this scene in Bratislava, Slovakia. The flag smashers are getting around in Europe, and they're loading their stolen meds onto a plane. They get a cell phone warning. They've been found, and we get the first mention of the power broker, and we hear it's the power broker's men, and this fleet of black government-looking vehicles turns up. One of the flag smashers volunteers to hold them off while the others escape, and all these camouflage troops get out and gun him down as Carly and the others escape on the plane. And then we see the sort of lead agent guy get his phone out and tell his boss the bad news. Then back in the US, Sam and Bucky make their plans. Bucky suggests that Hydra have the answers they need, or what was Hydra, and he sort of says they should go and see Zemo, and they do. And then we get this end reveal of Baron Zemo, Daniel Bruhl in prison doing his best Hannibal Lecter / Magneto at the beginning of X2 impression, to the strains of this classical requiem. You know, he must be evil. He's playing chess and everything. So there we go.
Exactly. Well done, Clive. We got there. I realised that obviously we're gonna talk about this and carry on, but I realised that we have a few people watching online at the moment as well. Please, if you've got any comments or you want to get involved in the show, I encourage you to do it, and I'll obviously get to as many of the comments as possible. But otherwise, we're going to continue talking about this amongst ourselves. So get involved if you want to. But if you're enjoying this, consider giving the video a like and subscribing and coming back weekly to see these shows and look at some of the other work as well. But anyway, sorry, back into thoughts on this. So who wants to go first? I don't mind.
I'll just throw out coolest character in this series so far is Dr. Christina Rayner. She rocks my world. She's hardcore, and she puts everyone in their place. But I'm sure now we will have to speak about that couples therapy scene. I'm going to shut up now because I'm really trying to be positive about this episode. I know I failed miserably a little bit earlier on, but I'm going to let you guys speak about that scene.
Okay, then Pete, Clive, which one wants to go first? I don't care.
I'll say quick. I hated this scene. I felt like this scene couldn't figure out what it wanted to be. Did it want to be touching or comedic? And so, it felt like just sort of really out of place. I think that this scene probably would have been better served coming way later in the series. Because as it is, it just felt sort of rushed and slapped in there, and it was bouncing all over the place between comedy and drama. And, did anything get resolved there? Did they become best friends? I don't think so. Was there like slightly homophobic undertones? Yeah. Why? It just didn't make any sense to me, and I was glad when it was over.
Okay, Clive.
Well, this was the stuff. A lot of the stuff in this scene they used in the trailer, didn't they? So it was just kind of like, okay, we're here now. If you've watched the trailer, ahead of time, it did. I could see, in one sense, this is a payoff because all the way through there's been this whole bit about Bucky staring all the time. So then we actually get into a proper staring contest. It's very childish. You're right. It did get a bit broy and a bit, a bit a bit homophobic almost, and just in that bit where they had to get really close together. But yeah, then there was a term I didn't mind that, personally. I was mostly enjoying it. It was a bit of a mixed bag. Yeah, and then it sort of, it sort of did what it needed to do, didn't it? Could it have done it more gracefully or in a better, wittier way, possibly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I kind of liked it. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, I didn't mind the scene. I agree with everything you're saying. It did have that kind of bro, like you said, homophobic tones to it a little bit. But it was also, the odd couple, somewhat amusing. I think the bit that made the scene really good is I've been wondering this whole time whether some of Bucky's problem with Sam was down to the point of view that he didn't take up the mantle of Captain America, and was Bucky feeling that he should have got that opportunity, bearing in mind he was Steve Rogers' closest friend and all of this sort of thing. And what I really liked was the fact that his line where he said, and if he thinks that if Steve, thought that about you, then he'd think that about me, was brilliant. A, it was brilliantly delivered and performed by the two actors. But B, I love thematically that's what it was about. And it wasn't this stupid, more shallow envy type thing. It was actually about, believing in that person and believing in something. So I actually, in a weird way, found the scene, I know it was designed to be amusing and everything, but I found it quite moving. Don't know, am I alone here?
No, not well. I'm sort of a bit with you there, Keith, towards the end. But it did hit that bit for me. I didn't necessarily feel super moved, but I did think, oh, okay, right, that I wasn't, that worked. But yeah,
you had to squirm a bit to get there. So as with episode 1, as Clive and Ian said last week, it's the way they did it. I'm more with Pete on this one, because you've got this, as I said to you earlier, the coolest character, and she's done something great, and then, oh dear, what are they doing? Really, will she do this? And yeah, that line, and then thematically, okay, we know where we are now. I truly believe still that, but it's not about Bucky and himself, because Bucky was Steve Rogers as well, and there was an honor there. So the honorable thing to do, or for Bucky to how he should be, is to believe that Sam should have taken up the mantle. I got that from the first episode, that he really believes that Sam should now be the Captain America, and that's why he's pissed off, right? Yeah, that's why they're staring at him and all of that, and why he's coming along on the missions is to maybe nudge Sam back. And then he does say, let's steal the shield. I don't think Bucky then is stealing the shield for Bucky, he's stealing it for Sam anyway. But unfortunately for me, I will not look back at this scene apart from just hitting that one beat favorably or positively.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel that's even though it's in a totally different time, but I feel that part of what Sam is going through is similar to what Isaiah Bradley's going through, in terms of, okay, he hasn't had the horrible things done to him that they did to Isaiah Bradley, but it was about that. I think he is struggling with taking the mantle as being, a black Captain America, and filling Steve Rogers' shoes. And I think that's Well, I want to get into a few thematic things about this, but before we do, I don't want to jump ahead. Let's talk about the rest of those scenes and get us to the end of the episode, and then we'll sort of dive into those sort of things. But yeah. So any thought? I've got an Easter egg I can point out, which is not an MCU or a comic book Easter egg, but a movie Easter egg. Okay, and I love it. The cell that Zemo is in, and Daniel Bruhl's character is in, is cell number 2187, which is actually a reference to Star Wars. Because Princess Leia's cell in A New Hope was 2187, so which of course I love. That really ticks my fanboy geekiness, and clearly the people who are making this show, you know, clearly grew up as fans of Star Wars as well. So I'm loving the fact that his Hannibal Lecter type cell is actually 2187.
Do you think he'll have his hair done like, in the buns, you know, like on either side?
He'd have to say, you're a little bit short for a Winter Soldier when he turns up.
That's a great line. Yeah.
But anyway, I've talked enough. So, guys, any thoughts on that last bit?
One thing, it did whet the appetite. It was a nice ending, considering how disappointed I was in the therapy session, and then I was a bit disjointed. How did they get the connection about going to Zemo? I rewatched it, and it makes more sense on a reviewing there. But yeah, having Daniel Bruhl.
Oh, he's great.
Looking ominous. Great end there, and Berlin is looking lovely, and I'm so pleased that we're going to Berlin next week. That's it. I have no more to say.
Clive?
I will just say that obviously we had this comic book reference of like the power broker, this idea of this guy guy or woman that we don't see introduced, and them being the source of the super soldier serum and being behind that. So the question is though, is the power broker the person that sent, you know, the text, or is that Zemo or someone else? We don't yet know. I mean, I seem to remember in the comics the power broker was quite a cheesy character, so I don't think they're going that way. They seem to be going something much more kind of perhaps a shady government type player. But yeah, we'll have to see where they go with that.
Question on that. It's only just sort of sprung into my head actually, but could it be the Abomination? Could it be the character that Tim Roth played in The Incredible Hulk? Because obviously he was part of that. He was one of the failed experiments to try and replicate the super soldiers, wasn't he? Under General Ross.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. It's only literally just come to my mind while you were describing it that way. I thought,
that would be quite an interesting callback. You think what you mean? Actually, he is the power broker, or
I don't know whether I'm necessarily. I haven't thought it through because it's just come in the moment. I haven't thought it through enough to see if, to quote an Ian, if it makes sense. I'm just wondering whether it might be a story point.
If you were going to reach all the way back to the Incredible Hulk and take a character, I think that they probably take that Tim Blake Nelson character, who turns into the leader at the end, who's like a sort of, you know, super genius guy, right? So, but
we never knew what happened there, did we? So yeah,
well, exactly. So I don't know is the question. Is the answer? Sorry to that question, but yeah, that's interesting, Keith. My brain hadn't gone in that direction, but yeah, interesting to think about that.
Very good.
Pete, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see Tim Blake Nelson or Tim Roth come back, but I have to see, you know, where it shakes out. I always like these sort of shady, quasi-governmental bad guys, right? I always think of Job in the Mission Impossible series, right? Like that sort of character I'd love to see here.
Love the reference.
Yeah. And you know, is it time to transition into overall thoughts, or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
So,
I realize we're sort of going feature length here. We're quite long on this, but
we're rapidly approaching a Snyder cut. Yeah,
that's all right. But well, not quite. But there are some things that I definitely want to delve into. But yeah, go ahead. You start, Pete.
So yeah, I think I'm still very much in a place where overall, like, the show is sort of hitting its marks and doing what it is supposed to do, I guess. But it's not wowing me. It's not feeling stellar. Although, you know, part of that might be because we just came off of WandaVision, which was so out there, and but then I also think back and think that, like, a WandaVision didn't really click with me until the 4th episode, and we're 2 episodes in here, so let's see what happens.
Yep. 3-episode rule changed from the 4th, Pete. You know, 4-episode rule is something that I do with series. So
yeah,
this is a truncated. This is a 6. So, you know, you get to the midway point effectively and see where you go from there. So yeah, that's where I am at anyway. I was umming and ahhing, kind of thinking, a good lady wife who was watching this with and WandaVision, she absolutely adored WandaVision, watched it all over again in a heartbeat. But yeah, I think she's over it now, so she won't. So I'll go to 3. I've said a lot about this particular episode and how it did wipe out some of episode 1 as well. So it's not wowed. So yeah, next episode is the make or break at Shea Williams.
Okay, Clive.
Yeah, I have some sort of thoughts about I have some sort of speculation thoughts, I guess. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, firstly, I guess this sort of gave me more of what I was expecting from the trailer. It didn't particularly wow me. It was, you know, it was fun though. It moved along. It hit the beats, you know, and you know, the John Walker character was kind of interesting. And although they do, you know, after introducing him as, like, you know, a good guy, now it seems to be, you know, they seem to be introducing these sort of little bits of edginess going into it. I mean, on that note, I did think that my speculation is that at some point he's going to be offered the super soldier serum, because you've got the way he's painted is he's, you know, he's this guy who's always been the best, right? He's always been like the #1 athlete in his high school, the best soldier in his platoon, you know, like the Medal of Honor winner. He's always, it's just everything's come really easy to him. And now suddenly he's Captain America, and he's liking all the kind of like power that comes with that, clearly, because he seems to be throwing it around quite a bit. But he's just had his ass handed to him by a bunch of super soldiers. And I think, and, you know, and he's tried to recruit help to go after them. So I think he's going to be looking for an edge. And I think that's when, like, Mr. Government comes in and says, how about this sort of shady, you know, super serum, then you can be a proper Captain America. So I wonder if he sort of gets kind of tempted by the dark side, maybe, in that way. But we'll see.
Yeah,
that's a bit of speculation. Yeah, and also on that note as well, actually, you're absolutely right. We didn't really talk about that, but whereas I said, you know, in the opening, they really made Captain America. Sorry, it's John Walker, isn't it? Johnny Walker. I keep wanting to say John Walker. They made him kind of seem a nice guy and seem relatable and all that. It's fair to say, yeah, further down, particularly the bit outside the police station, he does come across as a bit more of a douche in those scenes. I thought, I don't know whether you felt that, but it was kind of a little bit. I was like, I was a bit disappointed that there was a bit more edge then. It just felt a bit too early, but I don't know. But in terms of what I want to sort of get into, and I don't know, again, it might be reading way too much into all of this stuff, and I appreciate that some of this timing wise is more coincidence than planned. But I've only watched this episode once today. I haven't seen it a second time, but it really kind of stayed with me much more than episode 1 did. And I actually went for a run afterwards, and I was thinking about it. As I said, I don't think about anything important, just movies and TV shows. But it's funny because I sort of feel that when we talked about WandaVision, which was obviously a very different show, not just a different format, but a different tone, and yes, part of the same universe. But one of the things we said about WandaVision, and I remember definitely talking with Pete and Barbara about this on those episodes, was the fact that WandaVision was really about something as well, and it was about dealing with grief and loss and all of that sort of stuff, and how that played into mental health, which was kind of shown through the eyes or through the imagination, in this case, and powers of Wanda Maximoff. And I was thinking, like the first episode, we talked about, there was some family stuff in there, but essentially, was this just going to be an action show? Was this going to be like a sort of superhero Mission Impossible type show and all of this sort of thing? And I got to thinking that it does feel like it's about something on a few levels, and obviously it is a show that's dealing with race, although I think they're doing it in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed or forced like some entertainment is doing with those sort of issues. I feel like they're handling it in a realistic and a respectful and a well-told manner. But the other thing that I feel that it's sort of dealing with, and as I said, this is where it's a little bit more coincidence than planned because of when this was probably made. But I feel like in some respects it's kind of dealing with what we have gone through in the last year with the pandemic. And the reason I sort of feel that is it's dealing with the aftermath of the blip, which is done in a more a sort of more cinematic dramatized level, with the blip of the 5 years. But when you think about what we've been through in the last year, people have lost their lives, people have lost loved ones, people have lost their jobs, people have lost their livelihood. I've been fortunate enough that I've not lost anyone close to me, and I'm lucky enough to still have my mum and dad around. But I've barely seen them in the last year, and I've not hugged them once in that time. And I just sort of think about maybe it's just how it's resonating with me, but I'm thinking about the quote unquote bad guys in this, and I like the fact that the bad guys are in a sort of gray area where are they really bad guys? We don't know, but they're dealing with stealing these vaccines, or we assume that that it's being told that they're vaccines in the show at the moment. Who knows? Maybe it's super soldier serum, and that's about to be revealed or something. But am I nuts, or do you feel like this is kind of in some ways sort of dealing with something real and important, or is it just the way that I'm framing it in hindsight? I just thought it was an interesting thing, and I wonder what your thoughts were on this, guys.
I'm not, personally, I don't have it resonating with our experience of the past year. I need to process that, really. Maybe go for a run myself and think about it. But they are dealing with the blip as they started doing with Spider-Man Far From Home. They haven't ignored the fact that the blip happened, the MCU, and that is to their credit. They haven't brushed that aside. But interesting, Keith, that you say it resonates with you due to what we have gone through globally in the past year. But again, no, I'm not seeing that. Also, maybe because I'm expecting it to be escapism and not based on any reality for us on Earth One. That it isn't for me, but maybe the other guys may agree with you.
For me, sorry. I was going to
say when I say this, I don't mean it in any way to trivialize what's going on in the real world. Quite the opposite. It's actually, I think, almost saying something important, because it's dealing with things like people's mental health, you know, with the Winter Soldier and whatever. But it's also dealing with the fact that Sam, who did get blipped away for 5 years, comes back and can't, you know, get a loan at the bank, and you know, it's got this sort of tension with his sister because he hasn't been around for the last 5 years, and I don't know. It's just kind of, I appreciate this show was probably made and conceived before you know, COVID happened, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought it would be an interesting thing to discuss, but maybe I'm just nuts.
I think.
Sorry.
Oh, no, Clive, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't think you're wrong, Keith. I think there are some things that chime with what we're going through now. For me, but I feel like the show's reaching towards some things, and it's only totally successful, and it's not necessarily successful at all the things it's reaching for at the moment. Maybe that will happen as we get further along in the series. But obviously this was written, conceived, mostly filmed before, you know, the Black Lives Matters protests, but obviously all the thematic stuff around, you know, around race and around Sam's experience as, you know, like as a black man who's there, you know, and how his experience is very different to like a white superhero who's in the Avengers, right? But so you've got that side of things which just seem to be developing, and the thing is, on that we're being shown stuff, right? Whereas I feel on the other side, of the post-blip side, we're being told a lot. In this episode, there was a lot of exposition dumps. There was a lot of stuff about you know, refugee camps, and about this you know, this whole UN organization that's handling all of that. And I get it, it's world building, but it was all tell don't show. I mean, you know, it was a bit clunky, but I did prefer the sort of, you know, when they showed how it was affecting Sam and his sister in episode 1, but rather than just sort of dumping more stuff about this is what's happening in the world and this is why, you know. So that's why the flag smasher, or whatever they're called, right? How that, you know, why that's, you know, when that's connecting up, those scenes, you know, I was sympathetic to, you know, that they seemed idealistic and seemed to be wanting to do the right thing, but at the same time, I couldn't help, you know, thinking in my mind that, you know, are they about to unleash some bioweapon, and these, you know, vaccines are actually so that the quote, you know, people who were there during the 5 years don't die, but the other people do, that it's some horrible thing that they're planning. I don't know, but yeah, I get how it could touch on those things, and the idea that, you know, vaccine supply suddenly there's a lot of it in the news at the moment about countries denying exports to other countries, or maybe some countries have, you know, hoarding and not sharing with countries who need it. So there's a lot of that. So suddenly we get this sort of plot point, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of, they clearly didn't design that, and yet it's sort of there, sort of going, bing,
well,
you know.
Well, that's part of the reason why I bring this up, because as you've rightly said, and we all know, we're all filmmakers here on this stream tonight, and we know that filmmaking is totally about show don't tell. Yeah. and obviously the fact that a lot of this is sort of exposition that feels like it's been kind of shoved in the scenes and whatever and is explained, that's where I'm kind of getting to with this, is I'm wondering if during the post-production part of this process, which obviously has been, you know, post-pandemic and whatever, whether or not you know, that's kind of been woven in there. But again, I might be way off here. I think your idea about this you know, biological weapon or whatever, that's you know, you could be onto something there, Clive, for sure. You know, with that sounds like
possibly. I think I might have read that speculation somewhere else, so I don't want to take complete credit for that. But yeah, it did sort of strike me like, well, why are they smuggling vaccine? So immediately you start to think, you know. So, yeah,
I don't know. I guess I'm always trying to look for you know, I mean, I love my, you know, I grew up on, as well, you know, Star Wars and Star Trek and James Bond and Mission Impossible and superhero movies and all of that stuff. So I love all that jelly. But nowadays, especially with these shows where we've got bigger stories to tell, I just wonder, I'm always looking to see, is it about something more than just what we're seeing on the screen? And you know, these are just some, and the reason we do these podcasts, you know, loads of people have seen the show, so we get that. But I just think in terms of conversation and everything, I'm just putting some of my you know, personal thoughts out there, and I you know, I might be crazy, I don't know.
No,
but
I think even if you know, the people who are making this didn't intend it to be totally allegory, at this point in time, you can't show the word vaccine anywhere without it evoking a certain response, right? And so I think I didn't really dwell on it, but my first thought when I saw, you know, a bunch of crates labeled vaccine was, oh, they're going to talk about COVID. And then I went, no, of course they're not going to. That's stupid, right? That's not part of their world. But no. But it does ring the bells.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course, I understand obviously about production and when these choices were made and when these things were written and when these things were filmed, but also, as we all, I mean, you know, Clive's an editor by trade. You know, we all know that stories are shaped in the edit. You know, it's the third time you make the film. You know, the first time is the script. The second time is when you're on set and you know, you're actually in production, and the third time is in the edit and in the post. And I'm just, as I said, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just wondering whether some of this has been shaped to try and say more than originally intended. I don't know.
I think it's entirely possible, Keith, because obviously this Falcon and the Winter Soldier was originally supposed to come out before WandaVision, supposed to be the first like Disney Plus Marvel show, but because there were you know, there were COVID delays in terms of them finishing the shooting. You know, the question is, did they take advantage of or use those COVID delays to do some rewriting, reworking of stuff? Because I mean, I didn't particularly notice. I didn't think, oh, they've ADR'd that or anything like that. They come back and there wasn't any kind of like, we're on someone's back and suddenly they're like, they got some vaccines, you know. It wasn't anything like that, right? They were clearly labeled vaccine, you know. So I think a lot of it is just, you know, unintentional, but maybe you're right. Maybe they've sort of seen that there's a bit of that and they just sort of pointed the ship a bit more in that direction. I don't know.
Yeah. I just thought I'd put it out there as an idea, and you know, I just kind of you know, I want to believe that the show is about something rather than just an action sci-fi, you know, show, which of course is what it is. But I just thought to have a chat about it. Obviously, we're only 2 episodes in, and the story has a long way to go. I'm really looking forward to seeing Daniel Bruhl's back on screen. I really like that character, and you know, I guess the big question is he going to serve as like a sort of Hannibal Lecter style consultant, or are they going to, have to break him out of the prison or something, and in him to become a sort of enemy ally. Who knows where it could go, but it's kind of fun, whatever. So, well, look, I want to sort of start wrapping this up. Rebecca Gold, that's Ian Diaz's channel based on his web series. He's come in and said, "Hey, all, I haven't seen episode 2 yet, but will soon." So we've obviously completely spoilt that for him.
Yeah.
But cool. All right. Any final thoughts then? Before I realise we're approaching a 2-hour mark by the time we've signed off. So any thoughts before we close this up?
No, episode 3, I will commit to. I feel that way now. Not as engaging as WandaVision was, if you have to compare, or even The Mandalorian, if you're looking at Disney output over the last year and a half or so. So so 3 will be, but I think it will be a make or break for me there. I've enjoyed moments or certain scenes and maybe lines of dialogue or beats of the story over 2 episodes, but it really hasn't captured me as I maybe thought it would. So let's see what happens next week.
Let's see what's out there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Clive, go for it.
I have a frivolous thought, which is, Keith, you asked what you wanted it to be about something. What if it's about 2 people who are opposites who meet, but they immediately hate each other, but then as they get to as they're forced together, they finally realize they love each other and then they want to spend the rest of their lives together. So, because there's a whole bit about couples therapy. There's the whole bromance thing that's going on. So what if it's really about these two mismatched people being forced together, and actually at the end, I'm not saying they're going to get married, but maybe it's actually about that, right?
Okay.
It's a romance subplot.
Maybe it's this
romance.
A bromance. Yeah, well, I mean, he did end the therapy session by saying that they'd never see each other again after this mission, didn't they? So maybe they will turn it around. Pete, any thoughts on this?
I think we just have to wait and see where this goes. It's a shame that it's coming out after WandaVision. I think it would have been great before WandaVision to set the stage, but it is what it is.
Is it just me, or is anybody else enjoying the longer running times of these episodes?
It's functional. It's fine. Time to watch it.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up then. So, guys, where can people find your work and get in touch if they want to? Pete?
I'm on Twitter at Too Many E's, TOOMANYEES.
Fair enough. Graham?
I am not on social media deliberately, and you can contact Keith if you really want to. To me, if there's a fan base out there, I'm sure he could help.
Comment on this video.
There you go. Absolutely. Please comment on it. Clive, where can people find your work?
They can find my work by going to Vimeo and searching for my name, Clive Ashenden, and they will find my most recent short films there, including one featuring Mr. Keith Isles, Out of Hours, if they're curious. And if they want to contact me, then do comment on the streams. And that's the best way to interact.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, if you found us today, then thank you for tuning in. As I said, please check out some of the other work on this channel. We also go out as a podcast, which is LSWOT Cast, and that's available on all good podcasting apps. Please put any comments that you've got below, if you're listening to us on a podcast, please consider giving us a review, because that really helps us to grow the channel, etc. As I said, check out more of our work. If you want to see some of my filmmaking work, if you go to YouTube and put in British Isles, that's EYLES, as in my last name, you'll see some short films that I've made there. I'm also in a web series called Rebecca Gold, which Ian produced and directed, which is available again if you put in Rebecca Gold web series. And also on Amazon Prime, there is our good friend Simon Aiken has his film Modern Love, so please go and check that out also. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate your attention, and please join us next week for another episode of Let's See What's Out There.
It's out there.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.